Hello and welcome to this edition of the Southern Manx podcast by the fans for the fans. On this week's show we've got our usual hosts with us. We've got Mark Powell.
Hi.
Nick Grant.
Evening.
Joe Perkins.
Evening.
And myself, Orlando. On this week's show we've got to have a look at the Spurs game, Benfica game, Chelsea game, before having a look at the pending international break. United-wise, we're going to touch on Jose Mourinho, the story about are we going to be buying players in January, some team news, and then we're going to look at a Premier League roundup and looking ahead to our Premier League fixtures and our Champions League fixtures. So I hope you enjoy the show. So kicking off with the Spurs fixture, a 1-0 result for United, another 3 points, another clean sheet. What did you make of the performance, Joe?
Yeah, I think in the end, when all said and done, it was a good result. I thought the first half was a very, very cagey affair. Both teams lined up pretty much how I thought they would. Not a lot created, a couple of sort of odd half chances, and sort of no side really I thought dominated the first half at all. In the second half, I think we showed a bit more than them. I do think that. I think we showed a bit more intent. I thought we created the better chances. If anyone deserved it, I think we deserved it, shading it. And obviously, we got the late goal through Martial. So I think on balance, I think we just about deserved to get the victory, although it was a very even game you'd expect. And we move on to the next one.
Mark, we got a bit of criticism once again this season for the nature and the performance of the 1-0 victory. What was your interpretation of the game?
I think first half Spurs were very dominant on the ball, mainly because the way we lined up in our shape. We again had the three sort of ball playing midfielders in the centre of the park against our two. I mean, that helped. I think chances wise, there wasn't much in the game. I think I remember the Lukaku header off the post as probably as our best chance other than the goal. And I think a 0-0 on the balance of the whole 90 minutes wouldn't have been a complete shock. But we've got quite a nice habit this season of scoring late, and when you've got good quality to bring off the bench like Martial, you've always got a chance of sneaking it. But yeah, I mean, obviously not having Kane was a big loss for Spurs. I think it was a good result. Don't get me wrong, great result, 1-0, especially after what they've done in recent weeks. But it could have been different.
Nick, you've been talking highly of Martial all this season. Another appearance off the bench, another goal. What did you make of the performance by United?
Yeah, I agree with the lads. Really, it was a cagey affair, and it could have gone either way. Dele Alli had that massive chance just before we scored. The weird thing about it was our goal came from pretty much route one Lukaku flick on to Martial, which I think Jose was kind of hoping there'd be a bit of that when he started with Lukaku and Rashford, but it just didn't click. There didn't seem to be that chemistry there. But I think, for me, the main talking point, if I was a Spurs fan, I know that we got a lot of criticism for the way we set out and the way we played and the way that Jose does certain things. But if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be looking at that thinking, how have we started without a striker? Because Llorente didn't start, did he?
On the bench, yeah.
They went with the false nine and all that. So if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be more disappointed with that performance than, say, I was, being a Man United fan. 1-0 against this Spurs side isn't a bad result.
I think a lot's made of statistics in the modern era and being able to look back, records. Most recently, obviously, Jose's record against the top six. But then if we look at the Spurs game, I think Pochettino's record is similarly not great. Do you genuinely think that plays into players' minds, Joe, when they're in games like that and it's starting to get on a bit late and maybe the game's not going the way that they might like. Do you think that's genuinely something that crosses a professional's mind these days?
No, I don't really. I'm not of the opinion that it even occurs to them. I can only talk about my own experiences, and obviously I've never been lucky enough to don the red for United, but in the park on a Sunday, do you know what I mean? Records and stats and stuff. I think as a player, I'm not so sure they're even in your mind when you're on the pitch. I think you're just in that moment. You know, you're trying to get that goal to win the game. I'm not convinced that it's on their minds whatsoever.
In terms of the United performance, was there anything in particular for you that stood out as a real positive? Obviously, aside from the 3 points and the win and a clean sheet, but were there any particular moments or performances for you that stood out?
Not really. No, I thought it was one of those games where everyone sort of got stuck in, and we almost ground it out. We cancelled each other out a lot, and I wouldn't say there was any one in particular that stuck out as someone that performed really well on the day. As one of the lads just said there, when you've got someone like Martial to bring off the bench, then you've always got a chance of nicking a late goal, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, I think I was a bit not frustrated, but with no Pogba, obviously no Fellaini, no Carrick, it would have been probably a decent game for Carrick to play at home against Spurs for a bit of possession more than anything, a bit of control. I think we'll touch on the Chelsea game later on in the pod, but Herrera, I'm not sure at the moment what he's bringing to that side. Okay, you could say he breaks the play down nicely, but against 3 other central midfielders against Spurs, he can't break the play down because he's 2v3 in there. So I don't know. It was more of an efficient ground out, get the 3 points more than anything for me. I'm struggling with the game, to be honest.
Yeah, Nick, Jose was quite animated at the end, wasn't he, with the fist pump and then the shh on the lips for the 1-0. What message do you think he was trying to send there?
That it's a good result. He knows what he's doing. He's in control. And I suppose if we had recorded this podcast a week earlier, we'd probably be in agreement. But obviously, the Chelsea game has happened since, and we'll probably go into it in more detail. You'll probably ask that question in a different way later on.
Yeah.
Where I can give you more of my opinion on that. But thinking back to the Spurs game at the time, I would have taken a 1-0 before the start of play. So we got the 1-0. So
yeah, facts are facts. You won the game. We got 3 points. It's another clean sheet. So on balance of it, I think against a sort of a flying Spurs.
Yeah, I think, and that makes our record at Old Trafford this season. I think in all competitions, I think we've won every single game now. I think, and we've conceded, I think, 2 goals, if I'm right off the top of my head. 1 in the League Cup in the last minute, and 1. I want to say it eludes me now, but I don't think we basically haven't conceded a lot at all, have we? We've scored a lot of goals. We've won every game, so our record at Old Trafford has been brilliant this season, which wasn't really a strong feature of ours in the last couple of seasons, so it's a good platform to build on. Just kind of obviously need to put that into our away performances as well, but overall clean sheet, 3 points, good result for United.
Yeah.
Scott, how did you find it out there tonight? It's your Champions League's first start anyway. Good night?
Yeah, obviously as a young boy growing up, you dream of nights playing in the Champions League for Man United, and to get my full start tonight was a dream for me, and I'm just made up that we've got the 3 points and a clean sheet.
So moving on to our most recent Champions League fixture, the return leg at Old Trafford with Benfica. Another 3 points, 100% record in the Champions League. What did you make of our performance, Mark?
Efficient. I'm glad McTominay got another run out. Enjoyed that again. I think it was, on balance, is a good start for us. It was an early pen. Yeah, I mean, the goalie again for Benfica, he was in the news. He just can't stay out of the headlines against Man United this season. I wouldn't say it was spectacular again, but 3 points, still unbeaten. We go again. Obviously, the funny incident with the penalty.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I'm in two minds really. It wasn't spectacular, but it was efficient.
Yeah, Joe, we never really looked like we were going to lose the game. We always looked like we were in control, and that if we needed to, we could probably have stepped it up a gear if we needed to. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think Benfica had a couple of spells. They were quite busy. A couple of the players on sale that were a bit busy. They had that shot that De Gea saved well. But for me, the night was all centred around penalties. It's the first game I've ever seen where 2 penalties have been given away, and they both seem to make the challenges with their backs. The one on Martial, he sort of like backed his heel, and then Rashford, he sort of ran into him and backed him off the ball, which I thought was strange. Obviously, as the lads mentioned there, the sort of who's going to take it, who's not going to take it with the pen, the second pen that David Blind stuck down the middle. Those are the most interesting points. Just on that as well, I don't know what you guys think, but I was disappointed that Lukaku didn't get to take that penalty. He hasn't obviously been scoring recently. I think that was a perfect opportunity to sort of get him back on the score sheet and get him firing again. I was disappointed with the way that went, really, and Blind taking it. He sort of only plays the Champions League games. I'm not really sure what the thought process was behind that. But yeah, I mean, as Mark said there, it was just another sort of professional performance. He's not going to rock your world, but we've got 3 points and we're all but qualified.
What did you make of the penalty incident, Nick?
Yeah, I have to agree with Joe. I think when you've got a misfiring striker, probably misfiring is probably the wrong word because he's not really getting the chances, but when you've got a striker that's on a goal drought of 6-7 games now, if you can get a chance in the Champions League to add to his tally from the spot, you'd expect your 90 million striker to have the confidence to grab that ball and stick the penalty away. We don't know the ins and outs of the clubs. Some clubs do run on when you miss, you're off a penalty as it goes to the next lad type of vibe. And Lukaku missed his first one. Now Martial's missed. Is Blind now the penalty taker? I don't know, but yeah, it did seem strange to me. For 90 million, you would have thought you'd be able to score from 12 yards.
Yeah, I mean, I found it strange that he was, because it was almost like Martial was first, and then was it Herrera was second choice, or then Blind? So what was the actual order? It was very confusing. Really, for me, if you're main striker, your number 9, like you said, your 70, 80 million, 90 pound, whatever million pound striker's coming in, and he's not even in the mix to try and take the ball off somebody with any authority. It's kind of concerning. You wouldn't imagine somebody like a Zlatan doing that, or maybe one of the other centre forwards in the other top clubs. You'd expect them to grab the ball and take that. So I mean, at the end of the day, the goal was scored, and that, I suppose you could argue, that's the main thing. But from a personal point of view for Lukaku, you just want to see him take a bit more ownership in them situations, especially like I said, after he's had a few games without a goal.
Yeah, apparently listening to Jose after the game, he said that Lukaku did go for it, and then Herrera did go for it, because these are both guys with characters where they take the lead and take ownership of these situations. But apparently, as Jose's decision after watching Daley Blind in training, he was knocking the penalties in, quite impressively. That he said, "Blind, you're on the pen."
Well, fair enough.
Martial apparently was a designated taker for the game. Obviously, he was off at that point. So yeah, I think Jose's explanation was he wanted Blind to take it. He was, in his eyes, designated taker, and that was that. No issue. Ball went in the net.
Bit ironic that our penalty taker's called Blind, though, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I think the weird thing is our record for penalties over the last few years is dreadful. I mean, you expect when you get a penalty that you stick it away, it's a free shot goal, lads. It's from 12 yards. There's no excuses of missing a penalty at the rate that we do. And I think probably if we're on the system of you miss one and then somebody else gets a go, that probably don't work, because there's no consistency. You think, well, actually, if it was one bloke or two blokes who were taking it over the last few years, then maybe got a consistency there, and they miss probably maybe 2 in 10, maybe, I don't know, but. Yeah, he needs to get that right. It just seems odd. Settle on one man, let him take it. I don't think Lukaku is the most natural of penalty takers in my book.
He's not got a lot of finesse, is he? He's not somebody who has naturally, you would say, is pleasing on the eye. Technically, wouldn't be a strong point. I think it kind of says a lot about the game, really, that ended up being the main talking point.
Yeah.
Even though the goalkeeper had a bit of bad luck as well with the ball. I think it was Matic, wasn't it? Hit the post, came off the keeper's back again and went in. But I think that ended up being the focal point of the game. But ultimately, it meant that United had a 100% record in the Champions League. You'd think with that many points, you'd have automatically qualified. But I think now we just need 1 point from the final 2 games. Normally, 4 wins from 4 in the Champions League, that's you good to go. We're there, aren't we? Pretty much.
Yeah, it's goal difference is going to set us back. I don't think. Point would absolutely secure, but I think it won't come down to that really. I think Benfica, surprisingly, what I took from it, thought Benfica again over the 2 games did not look like a side who were struggling, that had got beat 5-0 against Basel earlier in a few weeks back. Thought they'd knocked it about nicely. Strange one that they're sitting at the bottom of that group with no points. 1 goal scored out of 4 games. It didn't seem quite
unusual.
Do you know what, Mark? I think I know we're going to talk about Chelsea later, but I think on that you just made me think, brought it back to my mind. It's another case of teams raising their game against us.
Yeah.
I felt that way a little bit about the Chelsea game as well, and I think that sort of fits into it the same way. Just a little anecdote before we move on from that Benfica game. Don't know if you heard, but obviously Matic benefited from Spilar's second error in 2 games to get that goal. But he's actually of Serbian descent. I think he plays for Belgium, but he's of Serbian descent. And he actually rung Matic to find out whether Benfica would be sort of a good club to join. He told him to go there, and obviously then he's popped that one off his back into the net.
Lovely. I did see a weird rumour that Jose has contacted Benfica about the keeper's availability longer term. I don't read into that what you will. It might have been a wild rumour off one of these transfer websites, but seems a bit of an odd one to me. But hey ho. So yeah, in summary, top of the group, I think 99.9% qualifiers as group winners, if not definitely through. Efficient performance again, and we move on to the next Champions League game on the 22nd of November away at Basel, who are currently sitting second in the group.
But not a lot has changed, not in terms of against top 6 opposition, not in terms of on the road against top 6 opposition. I saw a stat today, Manchester United in their last 8 games, under Jose Mourinho, away to top 6 opposition, 1 goal scored in 8 games, 0 wins.
So looking back more recently now to our game against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, a 1-0 defeat. Nick, what have you got to say about that?
Where do we start on this one? Terrible performance. Tactically all wrong. Terrible individual performances. Shocking as a collective. Chelsea deserved it.
And those were just the positives.
Yeah, 3 or 4 Chelsea's players were outstanding on the day. I think out of our players, probably only Matic can probably hold his head up with some sort of, positivity. I've been mulling over this one over the last couple of days, and I don't like blaming the manager. I think it is too much of a cultural thing nowadays. When players win, it's the players, but when you lose, it's the manager. But unfortunately on this one, I do think Jose needs to take the blame. This performance was coming all the way back from the Liverpool game, and I think I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days. When Jose first stepped foot on these shores, so we're talking, over a decade ago, about 2004, 2005 era, the Premier League was usually a 2-horse race. Yeah, there was usually 1 or 2 teams would probably win it. Yeah, and you know what Jose's doing, because he hasn't changed. What he does is he goes away from home against the big sides. He keeps them at arm's length, tries to get out with a draw, thinking that he'll win the home games, and then basically he puts the pressure on the other team to maybe mess up away at the so-called littler teams. So when he was going head-to-head with Wenger with Arsenal, you'd think Arsenal would struggle away at Bolton.
Yeah.
We would have our mares at Norwich away, or Burnley away, or Portsmouth away, when it was us and Chelsea going ahead. I just don't think he can do that anymore, because there's 6 big teams now. There's 6 big teams. You've only got to look at the difference of City going there and winning 1-0 and us going there and losing 1-0. And that's where the gaps appearing from. So I do think Jose's got to take the blame for this particular result, and I do think he needs to rethink these big games and how he goes about getting these results away from home, because I think it is kind of behind the times now.
Yeah, I think we'll come on to tactics in just a minute. Going on to directly onto your point just there about his setup away from home in against the top 6. Now his record for United and Chelsea since 2015 or something like that, he hasn't won a game away at these clubs.
His last 10, isn't it? I think it's 8 defeats, 2 draws, 2 goals. No, he's got 3 draws, I think, or 2 draws, but every draw was a 0-0.
0-0, yeah. So essentially, what he's doing is he's going out. He's travelling down to these away games, and he's setting up to protect first, right? So he's the 0-0s are proof that does work on some occasions. What he's not doing enough of is, okay, great, we want you to be solid. We don't want to go down, away and be really open and allow lots of time on the ball. But secondly, be solid, but then also try and win the game. And we didn't do any of that. But then against Chelsea, we allowed them so much space that the protecting job was half-assed, because it wasn't doing that at all. I mean, the writing was on the wall from the Spurs game for me when they had so much space. Winks, for instance, dictating the play at Old Trafford from the away side, picking up the ball middle of the park with no pressure on him. Exactly the same thing against Chelsea with Fabregas. You can't allow a guy who was teeing up Messi left, right and centre a couple seasons ago with his vision for that. For me, that's just absolutely ridiculous. And I don't understand why he didn't change it.
What went wrong for you, Joe, in your opinion? What did you see where we were being exposed?
It was the centre of the park for me. I've got to be honest, when I saw the lineup, I thought, wow, that's really positive. Like, I was quite excited about it. And the first 10 minutes, I thought we did okay. Rashford had that chance, he sort of shut his eyes and it sort of hit his needle head and went over. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, it was the middle of the park. I felt like we just had no sort of structure or commanding force sitting in the middle of the park. And every time that, the game was so open, and every time the ball came free, they'd have it in the middle of the park. And, as Mark said there, Fabregas would have 20 minutes to do what he wanted with the ball, essentially. And when you've got one of the best sort of players in terms of passing ranges and vision that's got that much time, and you've got players like Hazard picking up the ball who protects the ball so well, you're asking for trouble. And I thought, basically, after that Rashford chance that he nodded over, I never felt like we had any sort of semblance of control in the game whatsoever. I felt like it was, sort of caution to the wind a bit. And we didn't even, it was an attacking lineup. I don't even remember many chances. We just didn't have the ball. And every time we got it, we didn't really do anything with it. So yeah, I agree with the lads. I think from start to finish, it was a bad performance. It was strangely set up, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, again, going back to the centre of the park, Herrera, just not. It's not a criticism of him, because he can be effective when, I think back to the Hazard job that he done last season at home, but I'm not sure what he adds as a midfield too, because he ain't a ball player, and if he's not breaking the play down, what does he do?
I think that has a lot to do with the tactics. I mean, last season when Herrera did that job, we weren't playing 3 at the back. This is very much a this season thing, this 3 at the back. And having the 4-2-3-1 almost, if you like, allows, when we haven't got the ball, the midfield becomes much more of a 5. So you would normally, last season it was, you'd have like a Herrera, Pogba and say Fellaini in the middle, holding that middle space. And then you'd have your 2 wider players that would be in the front 3, turning that into a 5, so you can compact the midfield area quite a lot more. I think Conte doesn't really get a lot of credit for his tactical knowledge, but I think it was clear from here that he really didn't expect United to give a lot in the wide areas. Certainly in the middle third, and obviously our third defensively, because Young and Valencia, they weren't really pushing forward very much, so he could afford really to pack the midfield. So he had Hazard, he had Bakayoko, Fabregas and Kante, and really have almost like a diamond, because he probably anticipated that Jose was going to go with this 3-4-3, which basically means he's got 4 players against two of our midfield. Herrera works well because he hunts players down, he presses the ball really well, but Mkhitaryan, for me, didn't offer anything from a defensive point of view. He was a bit of like, I can only describe it really as like an Ozil performance, really, in terms of he's a luxury player, great going forward, but when the chips are down and when you need to grit your teeth and really get into a game and provide that support, he didn't really. So it was almost like carrying him. Lukaku was up there, Rashford was industrious as usual, but out more in that kind of left channel, really. So I think, yeah, we were exposed and the midfield was allowed to run riot for Chelsea. I think one thing to bear in mind as well, Chelsea basically have got a lot more legs than us, I think, as well in midfield. I think Matic at the age of 29 is a good player to break things up, but he's not going to be industrious running to and from box to box. Kante, we know, can do that job. Bakayoko broke free on a number of occasions. I think his snow cone haircut got in the way and he couldn't quite convert a few of those chances. Hazard was his usual self. For me, yeah, disappointing performance in the middle, and it didn't seem to be rectified all too quickly by Jose.
Yeah, that Bakayoko is a really good point, actually. That's something that Conte does when he plays that formation. Specifically, has a midfield runner, so someone that will break into that space ahead of the centre forward. And I think he did that a few times. He should have scored once, twice.
Yeah, if Bakayoko could shoot, we would have probably lost that about 5-6-0.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
you know, the only people in danger of a Bakayoko shot was the people behind the goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we were lucky there. But I think we've got to dust ourselves off, and I think everybody from the playing side of the club's got to look at themselves there, from Jose, from getting it tactically wrong, to Mkhitaryan, like you say, who was lost, to Herrera, who was pretty ineffective, to, again, Lukaku and Rashford not really finding any sort of chemistry, for Phil Jones's, I mean, the amount of times he tried claiming he was fouled when he wasn't. He got lucky with that disallowed goal against Morata, I
soft.
thought. Where was Chris Smalling for the goal? As Eric Bailly forgot how to pass to a red shirt. Ashley Young's apparently a left back now because he's the best crosser of the ball, but didn't put a cross in. Fellaini came on and looked like Chelsea's best player. You know, there was a lot wrong. There was a lot wrong on Sunday, and sometimes I think these international breaks are good from this perspective, so that the boys can get on the training ground now and hopefully put Newcastle to the sword in 10 days' time.
Yeah, I think all the key, the head-to-heads before the game, the ones that would have been in the media, in the press, Jose going back to Chelsea against Conte, United sold Matic, and then they got in Bakayoko. Should we have got Morata instead of Lukaku? All of these key head-to-head battles we seem to lose. Matic, I thought, had a reasonable game, to be honest, but ended up on the losing side. So I think in all of those key areas, we came out second best, which is really disappointing.
Yeah, that's it. I think you're right. It's not many positives, no positives from that game.
And our record at Stamford Bridge continues to be poor, really, doesn't it? We've never really had, even under the Ferguson era, and we've never really had a great record there, have we? And it seems to have continued.
I think it's 2015. And it was against 9 players. 9 or 10 players.
No, it would have been previous to that. The last time we won was
2012.
It was 2012 with the year we won the league. But we were 2 up within the first 15 minutes, and then the whole 9 players incidents, and then Chicharito scored an offside goal.
Yeah.
But again, we set the tone. Like I said, we were 2-0 up. We don't look like going 2-0 up again in these big games, let alone 2-0 up within the first 15 minutes.
And that's at the moment, and we'll touch on the roundup from the Premier League in a little while. But going back to the City, the way they set up away at Chelsea, they absolutely got their tactics spot on. So they nullified Chelsea at home in their backyard, which we never looked like doing. And you can argue and say, we had players out, whatever, but tactically, it just wasn't there. I know, you can argue and say that if Pogba was playing, we might have done this, we might have done that. I'm not even sure we would have.
I think some of the pundits made an interesting point, Joe. They said that, Chelsea have got a Hazard, City have got a De Bruyne, have got a Silva. United don't seem to have that kind. Okay, you could argue Pogba, but for me, he's much more of a deep line player than that. We don't seem to have, our, I suppose, nearest equivalent would arguably be Mkhitaryan, but he seems to have really, he had a spell earlier in the season where he was getting assists for fun, but he really has kind of drifted to the wayside recently, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think we've got, if I'm brutally honest, the player you just mentioned there, I think we've got 2 or 3 that, play that role but don't do it as well as those players, aren't as consistent as those players, aren't in the side every week, are being pushed out wide like Mata was for a while. I think that's the issue we have, is that, I would tend to agree. We have people in that role that play in that position, but we don't have anyone that do it as well as those you've just mentioned and on a regular basis. And I do think that is an issue.
Yeah, so maybe when you're talking about people, creative players who can make something happen out of nothing, someone like, I know we were linked with Perisic. I'm not sure he was the right answer in the summer, but I know Jose was keen on him. Griezmann again is another one we're always linked with. I'm not even sure he is the answer to that. When City are looking in their midfield of De Bruyne and Silva, 2 absolute, they're like little magicians. They're always creating chances.
For me,
and
De Bruyne is out and out best player in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah, I think if you look at Lukaku, and we're saying he's had a goal drought for however long, I can't remember in those games that he's missing clear-cut chances that he's been setting up. He's not like, he's had 10 chances and not scored them. He's not having touches on the ball, that's fair enough. But he's not he isn't going to get involved in the link-up play as well as others. He needs a bit of service, and that is where you've got to look at people like Mkhitaryan. And if you look at that 4 across that midfield against Chelsea, Valencia, Herrera, Matic, Young, that doesn't inspire me for any confidence that any of them are going to set Lukaku up.
No, but Lukaku reminds me of an old brick wall. Everything just bounces off him. He's like a non-stick frying pan. Nothing sticks to him at all.
Yeah.
I can't really remember. He's a big, strong lad. We mentioned it earlier. He's not got much finesse. He's not technically beautiful on the eye, but he is a strong lad and he scores goals. He's a physical presence, and what you expect from that kind of player is that, okay, not every single ball, because they're tough centre backs, but that it sticks and that we hold the play up. And I don't feel that he's doing that enough, really. And certainly in the last few games, I was really pulling my hair out with that. He just, with Zlatan got a bit of stick because he was old and he wasn't running in behind and doing those certain things, but his percentage of being able to hold the ball up and keep it was far and away better than what Lukaku's is, really. And I think if he's not scoring, then he needs to do the other bit and being able to bring the United players into the game to allow us to move further up the pitch. I think that's another reason why we don't seem to be able to pose an attack in for it, because we simply can't get up the pitch because the ball's not being held up to then allow us to get those 10-20 yards up the field, and then we're being pinned in. So that's an area for improvement for me for Lukaku.
Yeah, I think watching Morata, he did that really well.
He's really industrious, Morata, as well. He worked really, really hard. And you could argue because, again, it was a big game and he probably saw that, it's me versus Lukaku, I want to prove a point. But I felt he worked really, really hard and was a real nuisance. Remind me a bit of, like a Tevez sort of, was running every lost cause and causing all sorts of problems.
But so in summary, obviously second league defeat in the last few weeks of the season as well. Another away trip, so our home record is still, it's very strong. But in summary, more needed on the road, especially against the big clubs, and hopefully we'll put that right as the season goes on.
One day, it says that I'm going to sign a 5-year contract, £1 billion per season, and then the next day, you say that I'm leaving and I'm going to Paris Saint-Germain. I think that's the answer. The answer is exactly that. Is that nothing is happening. I'm not signing a new 5-year contract and I'm not leaving to Paris Saint-Germain. I am at Manchester United. I have a contract and that's it.
So United in the news recently again. A few topics. One was already preempting the January transfer window. According to media sources, Jose's been told that he needs to sell some players if he wants to fund buying some new players in January. If you could buy a single player in January, Joe, other than the obvious choices, what areas do you think we need to improve on?
I think we've spoken about it a bit already, but I do feel now as the season's progressed that although we have a few players that can play in that position, we do need someone in that number 10 that's going to be sort of that creative spark and produce something out of nothing like we discussed. I think that is an area we could strengthen in. Obviously that may mean people going out the door as well. I think Juan Mata may be at risk of losing his status as United player and going. I obviously do think that. Also as well, in recent games I have to say, at centre half, I think we're back in that sort of. It started so well defensively, and I know we haven't conceded a goal at home, but I don't know. I've just not been convinced the last few games. Whoever's been playing there, Jones and Bailly, that's sort of the stalwart so far up to a few games into the season. I'm not convinced about that. So I don't know. Maybe a centre half.
I think we've spent a lot of money over the last few seasons, well publicised. We still haven't got a left back. We've got players who say they're left backs but are not trusted for whatever reason, or just simply not quick enough in Blin's case, not good enough on the ball in Damian's case, or a failed winger in Ashley Young's case. So I think left back is still one for me that we should go and resolve. Similarly, right wing is still a problem. There's no one. Matt's not a right winger. Lingard is a decent squad player, but he's not a starter. You say Martial is more suited to the left, and Rashford similar, or either through the middle. So I'd say for me, it's a left back and it's a right winger. If we're assuming, a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, I think going to your point, Joe, on the centre backs, I think I'm fairly comfortable with Bailly and Jones. You've got Rojo to come back as well, who had a fairly decent stint at centre half last season. I'd like to see what happens with Lindelof before we completely write him off. And obviously Smalling will come in and at least head the ball in Lindelof's absence. So I think if it were me, I'd definitely be looking at an attacking player on the right-hand side if I had to pick one. But I'd love to see Mkhitaryan's form return. So, I mean, David Moyes signed a number 10 in January because he was panicking. I'm not quite sure we're at that stage yet.
Yeah, I suppose it's also about value in the market in January, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when Man United come knocking, that's going to add a 0 onto the price tag. If you're trying to buy anyone from Spurs, that's another couple of zeros to the price tag. It's a difficult question, that the one player, because I don't think any of us in this room could nail down what is the so-called best formation that we're playing.
No.
I mean, if it's a 4-3-3, which I was actually quite fond of last year, if it's a 4-3-3, then I probably would go for another centre mid to play alongside Matic and Pogba, like an outstanding
ball player, like your Kroos.
Yeah, like a ball playing centre mid. Push Mickey back on the right. One of the Chuckle brothers on the left, Rashford or Martial, and then also look at the left back situation. But if we're thinking 3 at the back is the way to go, and we think the 3 at the back is Bailey, Smalling and Jones with the back off Lindelof, and I can see Joe's point, but it does scream out, what is the left-sided player? Who is the left-sided player? Because he doesn't seem to fully trust any of them. So for me, the formation needs to be answered first. And depending on what formation we decide, it's probably a centre mid or a left-sided player. If 3 at the back is the formation we're going with, you can probably see now why Jose wanted Perisic.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I'm not convinced on it. I think it's done us well in the last couple of games, but I don't know. I still think 4-3-3 is the best way for us with the 3 central midfielders. Even you could do the 3 at the back. Just give us 3 in the centre of the park, because Herrera is going to do all the dirty work that Pogba won't do. Matic, I mean, he has to play. You can't sign someone for 30 odd million quid in the summer and he doesn't play anymore. And obviously, when Pogba's back, he is the one that's hopefully going to link all this together, and that's what we've been missing in the last few weeks. So Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure what business we'll do in January though. I'm not convinced that I think we should do something. I'm not sure what's most likely.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act, isn't it? I think in the previous January transfer window we got some good funds for, I'll say good funds considering, for Depay
Schneiderlin,
and
was it?
Schneiderlin, didn't we? We didn't buy anyone, but I suppose that adds to the kitty in the summer, doesn't it? Which I think sometimes people forget about. I think we got within the region about 30 mil between the two, which isn't too bad. So it may be a case of maybe getting rid of a few players to raise some more funds for the summer.
Well, yeah, the story about selling some squad players to raise funds in January.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what. Well, according to media sources and to the internet, that's what Jose's been told. If he wants to be able to buy players in January, he's got to sell first. So I suppose it's a case of who you'd sell in order to raise those funds and for what position. For me, I've always been a fan of United when we play wide, and when we get the ball wide. So at the moment, for me, the areas lacking is left back position. I think Valencia does a good job, but my opinion on Valencia is that if he was available on the market, would any of the top four go out of their way to pay 25, 30, 40, 50 million for him as their right back? And I would argue that it probably would be no.
No, I think given his age, probably not. But I mean, Gary Neville said it a few games ago. He's moulded into a very, very good right back.
I would say he's a good right back, but I wouldn't say he'd be kind of in the upper tier of right backs. I think he's good because he's at United. My concern with Valencia is just putting his foot through the ball, hitting hope like a pinball machine that it might come off somebody. He's definitely improved, but I wouldn't put him in kind of the elite bracket. But I think the problem's definitely more on the left-hand side if you had to pick between the two. As Nick mentioned through our stellar list of left-back options, I mean, Shaw doesn't even get mentioned these days, poor kid. What the guy's got to do to get a start or get a chance, I don't know. Seems such a waste. So it might bring back the argument for they're talking about Danny Rose, weren't they, for as a swap deal. But I mean, in other news, apparently Jose had a bit of rift with a certain section of the fans after some of our recent results.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of this through the Twitter followers that we've got, and there's a few questions sort of bouncing in and around. People sort of really slating him, which is bizarre. I mean, yeah, we're top of our Champions League group. We're second in the league. Home form's good. Haven't conceded many goals. Yes, performances over the last month or so haven't been, as they were under Ferguson. But we've got to have a bit of a reality check here. We had a decent season last year. We won trophies, back in the Champions League. He's brought players to the club like your Pogba's, your Ibrahimovic. His transfer dealings have so far been fairly good, considering the players that signed under Van Gaal were pretty much a disaster. So I think he's got a group of players who are not his players, and he's slowly sort of bringing in what he needs. So I'm not that worried about where we are at the moment. I think we're second only to City.
What have you made of it, Joe?
I think it's a combination of things. I think, as Mark mentioned there, it's been results in recent games. The tensions come about because of the way the teams have been set up to play. I think, you're always going to leave yourself open for a bit of criticism if you're a manager of Man United and you're not going out to out and out try and win every game. I know the Premier League's changed, but I just think you're always going to leave yourself open to that a little bit. I think us as United fans are maybe a little bit naive in thinking, Jose comes in, he's going to solve all the problems. When actually, when you think about it, that is the way his teams play. That's his sort of attitude. This sort of pragmatism is his favourite word, isn't it? And I think, I'm a bit uneasy with the whole, risk with the fans and digging the fans out in the programme notes and all this kind of thing, because it's just not what I associate with my club. And I don't want it going on, really, from either side, from the fans or from the manager. At Man United, we need to back our manager, and he needs to back the fans, and I think that's the way it should be.
It's a far and away different from the Louis van Gaal era as well, isn't it, Nick? Not so long ago, it was painful just to have to watch a Man United game or for a Man United team to get over the halfway line. I think we didn't score a goal in the first half, I think, till winter came. So I think sometimes we can be quick to forget these things, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, the Van Gaal era will not be looked back on with much fondness,
Absolutely
to be fair. But I think Gary Neville made a good point in the week that United fans' grievances are kind of emotional. There's nothing really tangible here. It's not as if the club's being mismanaged. It's not as if there's money leaking out everywhere, and or it's not as if players are taking the club for granted. It's the fact that City are doing better than us. City are doing better than us at the moment. And United, noisy neighbours, United fans, we're seeing that, and City are doing better than us. And it's a fact that there's probably United fans are split, that, and we do it in our podcast here. Some of us will always go back to the Ferguson era, and that's all fine and reminiscing. But there's another half of United fans that will not go back to the Ferguson era because they want to be more forward thinking. And at the moment, whilst that argument's still there of, well, Ferguson did it that way, it becomes more of an emotional argument. I think that's kind of where Jose's stuck here, is that Ferguson is still fresh in the memory, despite being Moyes and Van Gaal between the two. Ferguson is still fresh in the memory, and City are doing better than us. And I think, we are second in the league. We haven't conceded a goal at home in the league. We're top of the Champions League group. We won 2 trophies last year. It's not all bad, but we're just getting a bit emotional.
I suppose it's definitely progress, isn't it? It's far and away progress from last season. Just we can add a trophy to that, and we can finish more or less in the same position in the league, certainly in the top 4, and we can have a good spell in the Champions League. It will certainly be progress. I think, like I said, it's an emotional thing for United fans, and probably get guilty of it myself a few times as well. That you just want to also have that buccaneering, free-flowing, attacking football that certainly us guys have grown up with as United fans, and I think that's probably the only piece missing from the jigsaw.
Yeah, I think looking at City, I mean, we'll no doubt we'll talk about them in the league news. They are on it at the moment, and they're playing football in the right way. They're scoring lots of goals. It's exciting. They've got attacking players throughout their side. Pep Guardiola's a tactical genius to many. All this stuff, it's all clicking for them at the moment. And then United fans go and see us go to Chelsea really in a negative light. And it's always, like Joe said a couple of podcasts ago, we're football fans and very fickle-natured. So I think that's probably the bit that's kind of leaving a bit of a sour taste. You think, well, hold on, how come he can do it 2 seasons in with a squad of players that aren't his, and they'll do it. They'll be very quick to do comparisons with Jose. Jose just won't win the same argument with his style of play always, because it isn't always pretty, and that won't work in his favour.
No, that's true. But I suppose the other good news is that Pogba's back in training, so we would hope that he would be available fairly soon
for the Newcastle game, I believe.
I don't believe he's been called up into the France squad, has he, for the international break? So that will give him some extra time to recuperate. Hopefully, be able to be available for some sort of selection for the Newcastle game. If not, then hopefully the Brighton game. If not, the Champions League game squeezed in between that. So he's been a real big miss for us, I think. I think his miss has been felt more because of the fact that we haven't necessarily got the results. I think he got a bit of stick last season, didn't he, because of the price tag and whatnot, and what he was bringing to United. But I think we can see much more now that he is a really important part of the jigsaw for us, and he's going to make a massive difference.
I know about the B team. I know some of the players. They have been training with me dos, tres, cuatro times, and but I've not seen them play.
So moving on to Premier League roundup, a lot of news, a lot of goings on recently in the Premier League, and our good old faithful servant David Moyes is back, Nick.
Yeah, Moisey, he's getting the band back together at West Ham. It's probably last chance saloon for our mate Moisey now. We touched in depth on our last podcast about Bilic and how he had 2 games to save his job. In the end, he had 3, and we called him a failing detective last time.
Yeah, I think Mikel Antonio did him no favours with his moody cross that made them concede in the last minute at Palace. But I think the writing was on the wall, wasn't it?
Yeah, he couldn't crack that case. And more interestingly, apparently, since he's been sacked, he's been phoning the West Ham players, asking where exactly it went wrong. And the West Ham players have apparently gone in hard, saying your training was lousy and tactically not up to it. So, yeah, I mean, he was just too much of a nice guy. So Bilic is gone. And Moisey's in. I mean, I don't know what anyone expects to do at West Ham. There's a lot of problems there. So Moisey, for me, isn't a one who's... He's not a proven firefighter for me. I wouldn't put him yet in the same bracket as a Pulis or an Allardyce.
No.
He said in his press conference he wants to play attacking football. I don't know. I think he's already in a relegation scrap, and he said that after match 2 last year at Sunderland. So
we're expecting a Stephen Pienaar, Januzaj.
Yeah, well, funny you say that. Because I saw a rather funny meme of Moyes doing like a public appeal saying if you donate £2 a week we'll have enough money to buy Marouane Fellaini. So that was quite good.
I also saw a funny meme with David Moyes, and it was called Moyzone instead of Boyzone, and it had Moyes, Fellaini, Adnan Januzaj and Darren Gibson as Moyzone. So.
Goodbye. Nice. So yeah, it's a really strange appointment in my book. I think they were running out of options. Apparently, I've heard that West Ham were in for Koeman. Who's
Proper
the other
merry-go
lads?
round that then, isn't it?
There's a few others that they went in for. It was the big call-outs were.
Ancelotti, isn't it?
Ancelotti, well done, Joe. Yeah, my memory's not what it used to be. Ancelotti and Koeman were the big names on that list that they failed with. There were a few others, not even as high profile, and David Moyes. And obviously David Moyes isn't doing much at the moment, so he got the call up. Strange to hear him on the radio today. He said that Sunderland probably wasn't a good idea for him. He said he wanted to come back home back to the Premier League, but didn't do enough due diligence on the club that he selected. So thanks, Sunderland.
He sometimes is far too honest, isn't he, Moyes? He really, give him his due. He's very, very honest. But I saw him a quote saying he couldn't wait to meet the West Ham supporters. I don't know whether the feeling would be reciprocated, but he seems like a lovely bloke. That's all I can say. Like, and he's someone who'll put his arm around you and tell you well done. But I don't know. I kind of feel sorry for the guy.
Dave for a reason, right? I mean, the thing is, West Ham still need to understand where they stand in the league. They still need to walk before they can run, but they won't. They'll expect immediate impact of Moyes. Moyes going to come in and save us, turn this all around, get us into the top 6, playing attacking football, blah blah blah. And it's like, hold on, lads.
I mean, Joe, he's been given a 6-month contract as well. I mean, does that sort of say to you, it's almost like you get a secondment at work, don't you? Sort it out for 6 months and then go back to being unemployed again. I mean, that's not really not going to inspire confidence to probably him, the players, or the fans, is it really? A 6-month contract?
No, and by what I've heard, the fans aren't overly enamoured by his appointment. Listen, I think that Moyes it might be a little harsh, because this is my opinion. I think he's still sort of living off the back of, a good 10 seasons at Everton, where we picked them up in a similar position to what West Ham are in now. When they hit the heights, I think they finished in the Champions League qualifying spots, if I remember rightly, and they had a playoff against Villarreal and lost by the odd goal that shouldn't have been a goal. I think he's still living off that, and I'm concerned for West Ham because there's no cohesion there. They're not playing as a team. By what I understand, Bilic's sort of mantra was he, sets them up to a certain degree loosely, and then sort of lets the players be responsible for what happens on the pitch to a large degree. And I think if you're playing well, that works, which was proven in his first season. And if you're not playing so well, it can go horribly wrong, which is exactly what's happened. But yeah, it's a strange appointment for me. I think he's very, very lucky to get that opportunity. United. I think his confidence has taken a massive knock. She's got lower and lower and lower after failures at Sunderland and Sociedad. Some weird comments that he said when he was manager of Sunderland that was never going to go down well with the players or the fans. It's a strange one for me, and unfortunately I don't think it's going to work out for him.
Well, he needs to go back to what made him good at Everton, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? So we're now talking... What? How many years? When was he at Everton, and when were they even good?
Was it Thomas Gravison, wasn't it?
I mean,
Back in
this is
10
a long
years
time.
ago.
Andy Johnson is one of our Twitter followers, and
Hello, Andy.
he can vouch for us. This is a long time ago that David Moyes had any success in football, so I don't know why they think that he's going to come in and immediately turn this around. Bizarre for me, very bizarre.
Jumping on the Everton bandwagon as well, just to kind of change the subject a little bit, but keeping on the theme of Everton and weird appointments, Monsieur Claude Puel has been at Leicester, but Everton, David Unsworth.
Yeah, he's still got a job.
He's doing really well.
Well, the story coming out of Goodison Park is their number one target is Diego Simeone. So you can imagine how that phone call's going to go. Hello, Diego. It's Bill Kenwright.
Yo no hablo inglés.
Yeah. So
Did you hear Merce basically suggesting that Simeone would definitely be interested in Everton at this stage?
He's deluded, isn't he? Anything Merson says, I think he needs to take with a pinch of salt and do the exact opposite. He comes out of some nonsense.
It did make me laugh.
Yeah, it's an odd one. I really think some of these clubs are missing the trick with some managers that are right in front of them. I mean, Big Sam is such a safe pair of hands, and I'm going back to West Ham, but previously other clubs. Look, Bolton under Big Sam, the type of football that they were playing in the end with him, the type of signings they were making, Djorkaeff for Kotra, etc. Blackburn, when he was there, the Venky's group came in, sacked him, gave the job to some other bloke. They got relegated.
Been free for all ever since.
Been in free for ever since. Similar argument at Newcastle. They wanted Champions League football. They ended up in Championship football. I think these clubs have just got to be a bit more realistic. Do you want to get relegated, or do you want to kind of be in middle of the road, pushing for top 10, top 8? Because it's either go for broke and try and buy these players that will never get you there, or I just needs a bit more realism in for some of it for me.
Yeah, I mean, other points to pick up in the Premier League. Everton got
there's a last minute against Watford.
Against Watford, yeah. Watford
cleverly missed a penalty in the last minute, unfortunately for Tom. But yeah, that's a good result. I mean, Watford have been pretty decent form. They were Joe's early pick from earlier in the season, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple of players still in my dream team as well. Like Richarlison, who bagged the goal, and Decore still playing. Yeah, I mean, it is a good result, especially at 2-0 down, to come back and sort of form there to turn that around and win 3-2. You've got to be happy with that, haven't you?
Yeah, and I watched the City Arsenal game before us on Sunday. Again, City pretty rampant.
Arsenal, their usual sort of kind of spineless away performance against a big side. I mean, I know we get a lot of criticism, but Arsenal never really look in danger of winning football matches, do they? That require any kind of guile or gusto, and they need to do something. I think Wenger was again heavily criticised for opting for a player in Sanchez who has quite obviously made it clear he doesn't want to be at the club. Starts with him, who probably may not even be there in a couple of months' time, rather than going with his £50 million striker that he got in the summer in Lacazette, who has been in good. It's not as if he's been in bad form, Lacazette. He's been in good form.
Instant impact as well when he comes off the bench.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Iwobi just behind him. I don't know with Wenger. It must be very difficult to be an Arsenal fan, really. Wenger in, Wenger out, shake it all about. I don't know. Yeah, to me that was a strange tactical choice from Wenger.
I think that Wenger might sack Arsenal before Arsenal sack Wenger.
I think something needs to go there for Arsenal to change. when you've got former players, former legends at the club, Henry, he said a few not bad words, but he's been quite honest and critical of what Wenger should or shouldn't be doing. Dixon said a few things, Keown said a few things, Emmanuel Petit said a few things. There aren't many Arsenal legends, part of the Invincibles team as well, that have got a lot of positive things to say. They're all under the same thing, which is, I think, time's up, pass the reins over to somebody else and let the club move forward, because, they're in danger of, again, slipping down to another year without Champions League football, perhaps, another year where they just get worse and worse and worse. So, yeah, difficult times for them as well, I think.
Yeah, and so in summary, Premier League, we've got an old friend back down the road at West Ham. Some startling performances still from City. I think the rest of it, if you look at the top 5 now, it's kind of shaping up into the usual suspects, Spurs and Chelsea, and then backed up by Liverpool. So yeah, to your point, Arsenal slipping, but it's very close up there. I mean, even we're now level on points with Spurs. It is very tight from 2nd to 6th, and you think if City are carry on in the form they're in, who's going to catch them? But the actual 2nd to 6th could interchange from here on in. So we'll watch that very closely, obviously.
And a brief look ahead to United's next 2 Premier League fixtures. We've got 2 home games against Brighton and Newcastle, so hopefully we would be expecting a strong performance at home again to continue in the vein of form that we've been in, and another 6 points. And perhaps maybe if City can slip up in their next two games, we might be able to claw something back before we see them in December. So I think it's going to be an interesting maybe 6-7 weeks coming up for United, where we can really catch up City and make a real name for ourselves in the Premier League to get back top of the league, I think.
And to win, Jake, we don't win anything. We win, we qualify, we beat all these teams. 10 out of 10 we win. We get to the tournament useless. Yeah. It happens year after year after year. So I've even lost interest. I'm sitting here and I'm not even watching the game. I've got it on, and I'll be honest with you, I hear the commentator go, "We're playing Malta." He goes, "This number 18, he works at the checkout counter during the week of a supermarket." And I think, what am I watching this for? I can't wait for the Premier League to start again. And I'm excited today coming here, watching a proper game, looking at the results. That fortnight, for me, is a dead fortnight.
So looking ahead to the pending international break, we've got some standout friendlies for England. 2 games at Wembley against Brazil and Germany. I suppose the big news there is plenty of injuries, or so-called injuries, Joe, that mean England have left out quite a number of our usual stars.
Yeah, I mean, you say so-called injuries. I'm not convinced that they're all legitimate injuries. When you look at the team, the players that are put out, mainly from Spurs and City, I think obviously both had a lot of big games recently and a lot coming up. I'm not convinced that these knocks are actually knocks, or they just put it out. But yeah, I mean, international break, a couple of big games. To be honest, it just, the thought of it absolutely bores me to tears. I wish the Premier League was just carrying on. I'm disillusioned with the international football. When you've got players pulling out left, right, and centre, it doesn't do it any favours. But good to see that Ashley Young back in the England squad after a long period out. Hopefully he'll get a game and do something.
Yeah, so we posted earlier in the week on the Twitter page about the 4 United players back in the England fold, being Jones, Lingard, Rashford, and Ashley Young. Really cool for him. One guy who didn't quite make the cut was Big Mike Smalling.
Big Mike.
Smaldini. Deems not good enough to make the England squad, so that puts him at about the 5th or 6th best.
I think
English
he's
centre back.
Isn't he still dual signed for Maidstone though? So is he getting a game down there?
Maybe, yeah, good idea. Yeah, so that was a bizarre one. I'm not Chris Smalling's biggest fan, but I don't think he's sort of 5th, 6th choice best English centre back going. I know, Joe, you like Harry Maguire and he is in the squad, but I'd argue to say that Smalling has been playing at Man United for 5-6 seasons, 30 plus games a season, won league titles. How is he any any worse than, Harry Maguire, who's had one good season in the Premier League for a struggling side. So I'm not sure. It was fair. We posted. Is it harsh? Is it fair? Probably a little bit harsh on Big Mike.
I think you're. I 100% agree with you. Like, I think he should have been in the squad, but not necessarily there to start. But maybe that's Southgate's argument. Is he now looking at other players to see if anyone can break into that starting 11? Because there was talk of the Brighton centre half being called up as well, Dunk. So you'd have to presume that Smalling's England's career is pretty much done for now.
Yeah.
I'd put him in the same bracket as Gary Cahill. They both play for big clubs, but they're both not the greatest of centre halves. But you'd have to probably agree with Southgate on this one. Cahill plays week in, week out, whereas we might not have Smalling in our first 11 if we play with two centre halves. So maybe maybe there's something in it, but I don't think he's the 6th or 7th worst centre back in the country. You'd have him there on experience alone. The Lingard one's surprising, but I would say that his days in the England squad are probably numbered if he doesn't start getting United starts. It will be interesting how these youngsters stand up to the test of a machine like Germany and people that can actually play football in Brazil. You got your Loftus-Cheeks and Tammy Abrahams. A lot's been made of these lads, and it hasn't worked out in Chelsea. So if they're deemed not good enough for Chelsea, should they be good enough for England? There's a lot of talking points, but it's just ruined the international spectacle for me now, because we all know these 6 or 7 injuries are not injured. They're all going to start their next game for their clubs.
Yeah, Pochettino's already confirmed that Kane will play against Arsenal.
So for me, as a spectacle, this was supposed to be Friday night viewing. Sorry, love, the England playing. Now, if she wants to watch 13 Reasons Why, I'll probably watch it.
I'm going to watch the fireworks.
There you go. So we've all found something more different to watch other than England, and I think that's a real shame.
I think that, I was talking to this about this to somebody the other day. I mean, one of the reasons why England have these two fixtures, Germany and Brazil particularly, is because Southgate and England and the FA and their players want to be able to test themselves against the best opposition in the world football, that they would play at a Euros or play at a World Cup finals. And I don't know when would be the best time to play these games, because wherever you want to shoehorn these, because there'll always be friendly fixtures, because you're unlikely to get one of these teams because you'd be seeded in a qualification group. When would be the best time to play these fixtures in order to get the best idea of where you stand as a nation? This time of the season, you're always going to get these so-called injuries, whether they're real or they're not is irrelevant. You're always going to get these kind of injuries with Champions Leagues and whatnot. If England go out and win 5-0 on both occasions, what is that really going to say about England? What's it going to say about Germany and Brazil when you haven't got a tournament till next summer? I understand the theories why nations want to do these friendlies and test themselves against the best oppositions, but I'm really at a loss. One, when would be the best time to do these so that they're the most effective? And two, really, what are you gaining out of these other than showing off the third away strip for England all in blue for a marketing point of view? I fail to see what you gain from it.
I think there's obviously, if we're talking about fixture congestion, that's a bit hot topic and in itself. I think they're talking about, do you need home and away legs in the League Cup? Do you need replays? Do you need this and that? And obviously, as you said, these games got to happen, England games. So there's two things for me. The fixture congestion with the Premier League and all the other games that you've got to play, all the other cup competitions. Do you need 2 cup competitions? Probably not. But also getting the buy-in from the clubs around, and the players probably, around the importance of the games. Because it is just a friendly, it's a tune-up,
But my argument would be, if I'm, for example, I'm going to assume here, rightly or wrongly, I'm going to assume, let's say Harry Winks' injury is just a little bit of a knock, if it wasn't, or anybody else has surely even as a friendly fixture, as an England player, being able to say, I played against Germany, I played against Brazil, because you may never ever get that opportunity again at Wembley to play against those sides. Surely that would be a feather in your cap that you'd love to tell your children, tell your grandchildren, knocking that on the head to play Burnley away. I mean, I don't know.
I think Spurs' case, they've got Arsenal, so that is a bigger game for them.
I'm more on O's side here, that who the hell is Harry Winks and Fabian Delph to do this to England? I get one or two. Giggs used to do it, so we can't be too hypocritical. Giggs never used to play friendlies.
Ferguson, I mean, come on. Ferguson, this is Ferguson.
But this goes to me across the ages.
Who is Harry Winks? One cap Harry Winks. And who is Fabian Delph? Just got back in the season to think they are too big now to play for England. I think it's disgusting. I honestly think it's disgusting. I get Harry Kane is your leading light. You do not want to... If he's been carrying a bit of a hammy, which he has in fairness, then he probably doesn't need to play friendlies. But there are people there that do need to play friendlies to cement their place. If Southgate had a pair on him now, Winks and Delph shouldn't be on the plane. That's it. You've let down your country.
But it also begs the question, why are you going to play such friendlies against prestigious opposition like Germany and Brazil, only to give, no offence, people like Loftus-Cheek and Tabry Abraham a go? Surely that's not the right environment to give them a go in, because they're going to need confidence builders. They're probably better off in a home fixture in a qualifier against Lithuania, where it actually means something. I don't... That's the point I'm trying to make, a bit animated here, but I just failed to see, it almost seems contradictory. You play Germany, you play Brazil because you want to test yourself against the best opposition, yet you're not having anywhere near your best first 11.
Yeah, Jack Cork's got he's probably going to be running around on Friday night.
We're playing the world champions with England B team.
So to me, it defeats the object, doesn't it?
It's silly. It is so stupid. And, then your argument comes in about the fixture congestion, that if we are just going to mug these games off, why play them at all? Let the Premier League continue, which was Joe's point right at the beginning, that he doesn't actually fancy the international break. There's 3 different arguments all going on in this room on this one podcast, and all of them are against international friendlies.
Yeah,
it's just stupid.
But I think if we're going to learn anything from these games, then so I can kind of see what he's doing with the Loftus-Cheek, Gomez, and Abraham, because Germany do that all the time. And Spain, they'll blood these youngsters.
Yeah, but Germany won the Confederations Cup with their B team. They went with a whole B team, went to a tournament and won it. That's almost taking the piss, really. But that's almost makes it an idea of, it gives you a purpose to why they do that. Is Joe Gomez playing against Brazil on Friday or Sunday, whenever it is he actually going to make the plane to the World Cup? To me, again, it's almost like a token cap, like what Sven used to do when he used 198 different players or something during his time with England. To me, there's got to be a purpose to these fixtures. That's the point I'm trying to make. There's no point doing them just to tick a box. If you're going to play prestigious opposition, make it worthwhile, not just, we dual got a cap for England.
Make up a trophy for it. They
are the Nations League,
the United Nations Kofi Annan League of Nations Cup,
trying to make one up,
and that is a story for a different podcast.
So that rounds up this week's podcast. Hope you've enjoyed that. Southern Manx, by the fans, for the fans. Just to give you some dates going forward, we'll be returning around about the 29th of November when we'll be recording our next podcast. Please keep the tweets coming. Please continue to subscribe to us on YouTube. Any comments, any feedback is always welcome. Once again, by the fans, for the fans. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.